Da. O secundă. Se poate vedea?
Da, da.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bogdan Bîrseuan, and I'm a student in the last year of my bachelor's degree for computer science and English at West University of Timișoara. And I'm here to present my work, titled Solutions for Game Design Problems, a subject I'm very interested in, considering I've been actively studying it for the past 5 to 6 years, roughly. So, what is this and why does it matter? This is a study on solutions for game design problems, as the name suggests, and how they lead to higher user satisfaction and retention through the use of systems designed with engagement in mind. However, the title might be slightly misleading to some. You see, game design doesn't necessarily mean video game design, but we will focus on video games as this is where these systems are more apparent. Now, there's this trend in consumer software called gamification, which essentially uses game design techniques to enhance a user's experience in software that isn't a game. Let's look at some examples. Duolingo. It's one of the prime examples of gamification in software. It has leaderboards, quests, a shop, a map-like structure, progress rewards, see that chest down in the middle, daily quests, experience, daily play streaks, currency, health for every attempt, and a few other things that can be seen in the screenshot. They're all game systems. They even outright tell you in the beginning that it can be hard to stay motivated when learning a new language, so the app is designed like a game. Let's look at another example. Facebook and its Messenger have had multiple games over the years, and they have even introduced what they call instant games, with lots of options to choose from and play with your friends. They even had a more rudimentary version of this many years ago in the form of the basketball game you see in the second picture, where you could even send a singular basketball emoji to a person or a group, click on it, and everyone can play and compete for the highest score. So, what are the problems we will be talking about? First is information, or the lack of information. The second one is replayability, divided into its three pillars, namely variety, randomness, and control. And the last one is accessibility. So let's start by looking at the first problem. Information. Plenty of games with very complex systems require community main tools, wiki pages, and spreadsheets or cheat sheets. Two very good examples of this are games like Path of Exile, with its wiki pictured on the left, and The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, with a cheat sheet shown in the second screenshot. This is a big problem because it takes time for a player to search all this information when it could be readily available in-game. So what are some solutions? One way to solve this issue might be a display containing all the important info, maybe one that pops up on the whole screen and pauses the game, or one that just shows up near the thing the player interacts with. A good example is the display on the right from the game Hades. Another way might be using a codex. These are like small books that usually contain information a player unlocked in a certain way. The codex implementation shown on the right below is from the Mass Effect series. As a reminder, the solutions presented today aren't mutually exclusive and aren't the only possible solutions. Any game and/or software can implement multiple of these, based on where and how they need to be presented to a user. I'll also go into a lot more detail in my paper about all the solutions I'm presenting today and a few more. Now, next problem. Replayability. This problem is split into what I call the three pillars of replayability. First, variety. Imagine you start a game and you have a single enemy with the same one or two attacks every time, the same movement pattern, the same attack and health numbers. It would get boring and repetitive very quickly, giving you no real reason to continue playing after the first few minutes, once you learn everything about it. Second, randomness. Playing the exact same situations over and over again is rarely desirable, unless the third pillar is present to a high degree. Control. It ensures the player stays engaged in the game. We don't want them to feel like they are watching a movie or a TV show. If that's what they wanted, they wouldn't be playing a game. There are exceptions, obviously, like visual novel games that act like a choose your own adventure book, but those are for a more niche audience generally. Let's look at some solutions. For variety's sake, we can use different visual representations of enemies, give them multiple attack patterns uh, or movements, or have tiers like normal enemies, enhanced, bosses, among other solutions. For randomness, we can decide on upper and lower limits for random generation. This can be done for rooms or number of enemies in a place or the stats of each enemy. We could randomly pick a number from that limited range or use weights for each option in the limited range that dictates what chance the item has to spawn. For control, we want to give the player options to choose from, in whatever form that comes in. For example, we can let them choose what character and/or map to play, or make sure we have interactable objects in the game which can be used in ways that change gameplay, so the player can switch their strategy on the fly. Now, let's look at our last problem, namely accessibility. It doesn't only refer to giving as many users the ability to interact with the software, but doing so in a way that they view as easy and intuitive. And for many apps, accessibility can be easily improved with some solutions that aren't that hard to implement. Although that does not mean that all presented solutions can be easily included. Let's look at some of them. All software should try to not stray away from standards. Buttons should do what you expect them to do. Imagine if you press delete on an item and it created a new one. That would be quite confusing. Controller support is great for players who simply like or are used to that input device more, and for players with disabilities, since they can just simply remap the controller buttons to whatever input device they need. Supporting languages with a lot of speakers can add a great number of users, think Spanish, Chinese, French, and others. Again, the solutions presented today aren't the only possible ones, nor the only ones presented in my paper, where they are also discussed in much greater detail, so check it out. Now, to conclude and leave time for some questions, I think we can safely say that the use of game design techniques in software of any kind leads to an increased user base, with higher retention and engagement, by solving the problems we talked about, like availability of information, better replayability, so using any software doesn't feel like a dread or a chore, and making software intuitive and easily accessible. I would also like to give some special thanks to Professor Dr. Mark Franco for his help in regards to structuring my paper, ensuring it is up to academic standard. Also, a big thank you to everyone for your attention during this presentation. If anyone wants to talk about game and or software design, you can easily reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Thank
Now,
you.
if there are any questions, feel free to ask.
Do you have in mind the game that will solve and will respect all that you mentioned in your presentation? Or
Excuse me, the audio is not that great. Could you repeat?
um, do you, if you think of a game that you would like to implement that will respect everything you mentioned this
Yes, I have a
presentation?
game where a lot of these solutions are or will be implemented. Uh, I can show you an example in the
Yes,
case
please.
of replayability. Uh, 1 second. So I ran my game and did a little script to be able to output the floor generation for my game because there's currently no way to actually see it in game, but I wanted to be able to show it. So this, for example, for the first floor, each one of these signs represent a different type of room
We are not
with
seeing,
different
we are just
rules.
seeing the presentation. I think you share only the
Oh,
presentation, not the entire screen.
yeah, my bad. 1 second. Uh, can you see it now? Okay, great.
Yes.
So as I was saying, I made a small script to output the internal variables and all that. So you can actually see how a floor is generated. This is, for example, the first floor, again, randomly generated. everything you see, the different characters, showcase a different room with different rules for spawning, different sizes, and all that. And the big one here is floor 15, uh, which, as you can see, much bigger with a lot more rooms, a lot more types. So yeah, that's about it. That's one of the more the bigger things in the game that I'd like to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Um,